The honourable member from Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, cost, or disorder. 66 people died on average while we waited for this Prime Minister to make a decision on BC's request. The government dithered and people died. The government didn't even go as far as it could have in getting rid of its aggressive, radical, and WACKO legalization of hard drugs. Why did it take this government so long to reverse its course on legalization, and will it promise never to do it again?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, of course, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister dealt with that thoroughly earlier in this question period, and we've amended our arrangement with British Columbia. But that member needs to answer a very important question. The Leader of the Opposition has now vowed to have an a la carte Charter of Rights, where today he will decide what rights to have and what rights to not have. What will it be tomorrow, Mr. Speaker? Will it be women's reproductive rights? Will it be the right to a fair trial? Will it be the right to freedom of expression? The notwithstanding charter-ripping policies of this Conservative Party need an answer.
The honourable member from Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
After 9 years, this Liberal NDP Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. Across British Columbia, there's people strung out on drugs, often comatose or dying. The legalization of fentanyl, meth, and crack has led to a tragic wave of death. The Liberals and NDP are panicking as their poll numbers drop. The public is fed up. Deadly hard drugs will still be able to use with today's announcement. When will this Prime Minister stop tinkering and completely end his WACKO drug experiment?
The Honourable Minister for Mental... The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
I thank the honourable member for the question, but I must remind him that that question was already answered. And on this side of the House, what we want to emphasize is that a woman's right to choose and charter rights generally are non-negotiable. On this side of the House, we will always protect the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We will always stand up for a woman's right to choose, and we ask everybody in this House to vote in favour of contraception for women so they have autonomy over their own bodies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs and disorder. The Liberal Minister responsible for the legislation of hard drugs like fentanyl, meth and crack in British Columbia is still clinging to parts of the Liberals' WACKO hard drug legislation experiment. Public open drug use is rampant in our streets. People are even afraid to take their dogs out to walk around their own neighbourhoods. On what day will the Prime Minister completely end this failed radical drug policy?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. Today we said yes to BC's request for an amendment to their pilot project. The pilot program that BC asked the federal government to work with them with compassion, conviction, science and health expertise, Mr. Speaker. BC knows perfectly well, as the advocates and families who are part of this project, that we need to have a public health and public safety approach to this to save lives.
The honourable member from Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that minister is still supporting hard drug legalization, and here's how it's playing out in our communities. A resident from my community just told me about an incident she witnessed at a local clothing store where a man threatened the two ladies working there, screaming, stomping, and overturning displays. I was on the phone the other day with another resident who works at a street front office, and I could barely hear her due to the screaming just outside her window. And yet this minister clings to parts of her WACKO legalization policy of fentanyl, meth, and crack. Again, on what day will the Prime Minister completely end this failed drug policy experiment?
Before we continue with the answer from the Government House Leader, I'm going to ask the honourable member from New Westminster Burnaby please to not comment while members are asking the question. He doesn't have the floor at this time. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, of course, the Minister and the Prime Minister have dealt with that question. But what is important is to review the past couple of weeks, a very disturbing trend in this country, Mr. Speaker, where the Leader of the Opposition has refused to disavow, to say it's unwelcome to have the support of white supremacists. Then he goes and winks and says, I will make the laws and I will decide what rights exist in this country. What rights is he going to take away? What rights does he intend to take away? Is it women's reproductive rights? Is it the right to freedom of expression? Stand up and tell us what rights you take away.
Colleagues, the amount of time that the Speaker has to spend getting up to asking members who don't have the floor to please not take the floor is almost equivalent to a question. I would like members, please, to make sure that we could have our question period move along quickly, that members please refrain from speaking when the members are asking questions, and that members refrain from speaking when a member is answering questions. L'honorable député